And welcome back. And yes, Leanne, from time to time, we do feel like our eyes are deceiving us with the lights, but yeah, they were on elsewhere. President Cyril Ramaphosa says that resolving energy challenges isn't just urgent, but it is fundamental to South Africa's economic recovery. Now, government is making every effort to bring new power generation capacity online, as announced by Minister Gwede Mantashe, the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, last week. And Mantashe said that South Africa had selected 8 preferred bidders to supply about 2,000 megawatts of emergency power to address the shortages in capacity. And the power will be produced from a range of sources, including solar, wind, liquefied natural gas, and of course, battery storage. And these projects will involve an investment of around 45 billion rand by the private sector and should be providing power to the nation by August next year. And joining us now to discuss some of these matters further is Ted Blom, mining and energy expert, and South African Federation of Trade Unions, or SAFTU, Secretary General Zwelinzima Vavi. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. To both of you, welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning to you, Sakina. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Mr. Vavi, let me start with you. The President's communication reflects the commitments made by Minister Mantashe last week. What are your views on these commitments? Are they a guarantee that we will start seeing some alleviation from the load shedding problem?
Let's start with the political and ideological issues, Sakina. SAFTU remain absolutely opposed to privatization of the energy supply in South Africa as a matter of principle. We regard energy just like oxygen, water, education, healthcare, municipal services. All of those basket of the most fundamental areas of human life to be issues that should be provided by the state itself, mainly because without electricity, without water, education, and healthcare, human beings will suffer even greater levels of hardships. We are opposed to using energy, education, public health care, oxygen, right to clean oxygen, to subjecting all of that to the private interest of profit maximization, because we know what will be the price society will pay if we were to hand over those responsibilities to the private sector. So I wanted to make that. We see all of these announcements from the minister, now by the president, to be a consistent step of taking energy away from the hands of the public and handing it over to the hands of the private sector to maximize profit, and for the profit of not using it as a common good, but as an instrument to generate money for the private investors. Having said that, the second point we want to make is that you cannot blame us for beginning to have conspiracy theories. We have been in this crisis now for 12 years and more. You can't tell me that this government cannot find a handle to fix the crisis at Eskom 12 years down the line, knowing the price that this economy is paying for all of what we are going through at this particular level. It's just unbelievable that for 12 years, this government can't fix the problem, and instead we have seen now South Africa paying for more in terms of electricity, at a rate of above 300% increases over the past 10, 12 years. It's just unbelievable that South African society have allowed this to happen. Eskom used to be an institution that was providing the cheapest electricity in the world. We now have the most expensive electricity. In addition, it's not reliable. And then the third point we're raising, even what we now being asked to tolerate is going to be yet another effort to bring in private investment and which is going to make even that 300% looks like a child, a Sunday school picnic at the end, in the long run. And we opposed to this.
Now, Ted, as Mr. Vavi points out there, this is now the fifth bid window where the latest IPPs were actually contracted. Has that been something that has brought any sort of relief to the South African power grid? Because they do come at quite a cost, and not only an investment, but they do come at a cost to the taxpayer as well. So has it been value for money?
Good morning. No, I think I share a lot of sentiments with Mr. Vavi. He's a very powerful thinker and speaker. And I agree with him that the electricity scenario or terrain couldn't have been more messed up by the ANC government than if they tried. Let's get back to the current bid windows. Yes, it seems like they're trying to patch the leak, but it's far too little, far too late. I called for power barges to come in as an emergency measure for 5 years in 2008 and again in 2013. What we're seeing now is unfortunately very suspect because the renewable parts of it don't address the peak demands of our economy. And as you've mentioned, come at an immense cost. I mean, the bid window one is running at over 5 rand a kilowatt hour as far as I can remember at this stage because of inflation and escalations. So, and they're not available at peak times, especially now when we're going into winter. The availability of renewable energy is even more curtailed than the 30% or 20% that it is available in the rest of the year. So where are we? I think we're still heading for a disaster. Mr. Vavi mentioned about the cost to the economy. Well, I just did a calculation. Eskom's current CEO scenario released last Monday afternoon, second last slide, talks about up to 70 days, 64 to 70 days of load shedding this winter, which is in a couple of weeks' time, and this summer, which is a little bit further away. If it comes to 70 days, that's a cost of trashing businesses, GDP in South Africa of over 350 billion rand. My question is, who gave Mr. Director the right to trash our economy, Mr. Vavi's economy, my economy, workers' economy, South Africans' economy, by 350 billion rand without even giving us a chance to have our say?
So let's talk about having our say and what has been going on at Eskom, because it seems a bit of a case of same script, different cast. For some reason, we're not getting it right at Eskom, regardless of who seems to be at the helm. Now, regarding one of the latest controversial issues, the South 32 contract, according to Eskom, a National Treasury's concern is for Eskom to find cheaper coal. And Eskom is saying that this will cause them to put new infrastructure into place while there is existing infrastructure to supply coal to the Duva power station. So, Mr. Vavi and then Ted, as briefly as possible, because I want to run through quite a few things here. What is your understanding about what is going on with that South 32 coal deal? Because I'm getting vibes of deja vu on this one. But also, is Eskom paying too much for coal at this point? Mr. Vavi and then Ted.
Well, firstly, the government's policies and programs are contradictory. You don't know what they stand for. Overall, government says to the country, we're moving towards renewables. We have made commitments at the international level to make sure that we move away from the carbon economy towards renewable. They say we will embark on a journey involving communities, workers, as part of our consultative process. But the policies, look at the policies. The policies are contradictory in this way. Government is not stepping off from the carbon economy. It is now adding the pipelines for gas. It is adding the nuclear with all of its dangers and all of the dangers of the gas. And it is still not taking any steps to ensure that the best of coal remain in South Africa and that coal is cheap. Nothing. Despite all of what we're hearing in the Zondo Commission, there is no one standing up to say, we are going to make sure that the best of coal remain, and we're going to renegotiate all of the contracts to make sure that the coal is affordable at the part of Eskom. All of the part of the cost of these contradictory policies are passed over to us, the consumers, and we are now up to here. I mean, this economy is in doldrums thanks in the main to the crisis of energy in South Africa, led by Eskom, a company that was just 2 decades ago regarded as the best power utility in the world. And thanks to successful governments of the ANC, it is now on its knees. These power IPPs are being subsidized at R2.20 by Eskom. I've never seen this. You bring in private interest to come and compete with the state institutions, but that power institution is forced to subsidize these IPPs who are coming from all over the world. This is betrayal and this is treason. This is treason.
Now, Ted, your response to this as well. I'm looking at that letter that Treasury sent to Eskom regarding what's happening at South 32. And as I say, it sounds like deja vu if you think of what happened with Optimum. Again, a hardship clause seems to have been triggered here, and a new coal supply agreement asking for more money on this. What's going on there?
Okay, I asked the question, and I cover mining and energy, as you correctly mentioned up front. So I've had a look at that transaction, and I actually have the fortune of having had insight into the numbers that have been presented, the real numbers that occur at that supplier. And there is a massive mismatch, and I've said so publicly, and it's been recorded in newspapers. In fact, I feel so strongly about this, and about the lack of transparency, the opaqueness, the lack of an open tender, etc., that I commit myself that in the next 7 days, I will personally lay a charge against the incumbents of that transaction at the Sandton Police Station under the Prevention of Corruption Act. I am so furious about the ongoing corruption at Eskom that I will personally present myself to the Sandton Police Station to open a charge of corruption against the person.
Just a few steps back, because I think I understand where you're going with this, why you may feel so strongly about it. But perhaps just for the viewer at home, can we break it down as to what seems to be the point of contention with this particular agreement?
Okay, so the players are the same players who actually enacted the hardship clause in 2010 on Optimum. Same players, if you look behind the scenes, very similar to the Guptas, except that this one is 30 times bigger than what the Guptas there to do. And what has happened is Duva had a coal supply agreement for 40 years. That agreement expires around about 2024. The new buyers want to buy the whole of South 32, which includes Duva and some other operations, and including export operations. They fiddled with the cost internally in one company. They've allocated randomly some cost to Eskom and some cost to the export, and now they're pleading hardship. We say, no, the Eskom costs are not covered by the Eskom revenue, notwithstanding on the export side. They are making much bigger profits. And if they didn't declare hardship, if you and I ran the thing on an ethical basis, we'd say, okay, well, for this period of time, there might be a lesser contribution by Eskom, but we're still making a fantastic big profits on the exports. What Eskom has done, it said, Shane, we will add 500 Rand, 476 to be precise, Rand a ton onto the Eskom costs of coal. And that is untenable. That makes it the most expensive supply of coal by far. And that is the heart of the corruption. And I can't believe it that the people at Eskom, who claim to be coal experts, are publicly decrying the fact that I was recognized as an analyst, can even think of proposing not an extension of 4 years to the end of the contract, but a 14-year, which comes to 68-odd billion Rand, of which 34 billion Rands go straight into the pockets of the perpetrators.
So who are the players here? Because I think it's important. If we are happy to flag the Guptas when they do wrong, we should be happy to flag everybody. Who are the main players here?
So the players that are playing this game is South32, the vendor or the seller of the mining assets. They're providing the input and the figures because it's their numbers, and they're manipulating the cost to make it look as if it's a hardship case. And then secondly, it suits the buyer, Sereti Coal, who previously, as I said, did this very identical transaction at Optimum in 2010, 2011. And got the coal price increased by a factor of 2, if I remember correctly. So, and then under Sereti, there's a whole consortium of 4 or 5 big players, and it includes very, very senior members of the ANC, the ruling party.
Who are they?
It includes Tebe Investments, and then a couple of other investment consortiums. And I'll reveal at the poker charge that I'm about to lay who the other players are and shareholders are in the other companies. There are about 5 companies, Mr. Vavi.
So, and this is the problem, Mr. Vavi, because at this point, given how Eskom has become an albatross around the neck of South Africa, we would imagine that we would be trying to find solutions to Eskom's problems and not exacerbating the problem. Treasury is very clear in their communication to Eskom. They are very clear that they are not for the deviation that Eskom is seeking with regard to this deal. And they say the reason to deviate and to appoint South32 without testing the market is not justifiable. And yet Eskom maintains that they are justified in going that route. So what's the way forward in terms of costs? Because we are unfortunately out of time. Hopefully we'll have further discussions, but for today we're out of time. So just your closing comments and what's the way forward from your side, Mr. Vavi?
Look, I don't have the details about this South 32 scandal, because it looks like it's a complete scandal of yet again the South African citizen being made as a milking cow on behalf of his private interest. If what Ted is saying is true, and I would like to engage him after this discussion, then we will go together to lay the charge at the police station, no doubt about it. We cannot allow the private interest again to prevail above the public interest. Eskom should be saved and not to be pushed down and down the hill by private interest to make money in a corrupt way. This is absolutely unacceptable.
And Ted Blom, your final shot for us here?
Well, I'm glad Mr. Vavi has seen the light, and he's always been somebody who's been true to the people. The bottom line is, yes, there should be far more transparency. And really, if Treasury says it's not good enough, then it's not good enough for me as well. But I've also got the fortunate situation that I have the internal numbers, because I looked at that project a few years ago and I could see this coming. The same players, as you said, different players, same tune. And they're just repeating the recipe over and over and over and milking and killing Eskom.
And I certainly look forward to, looking at more of what is actually happening, all sorts of things, the amount of diesel that is burnt. I mean, I wanted to talk about what happened last week in the middle of a planned load shedding schedule where Eskom simply said, well, we'll put it on hold. Why not any other time? Many South Africans will ask, but a conversation for another day because we are out of time. But thank you so much, mining and energy expert Ted Blom and SAFTU Secretary General Zwelinzima Vavi, for discussing the country's electricity supply with us, as well as government's attempts to improve part of it by August next year. So all remains to be seen, and hopefully we'll have more discussions about this and bring Eskom on as well.